This is the Mobile Tech Podcast, brought to you by worldpodcasts.com. Now here's your host, Tech Girl, Miriam Joie.
Brought to you by Mint Mobile. Stay tuned for a special offer at the end of the show. Hi, and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Joie, and today is September 2nd, 2023. I'm in Berlin for IFA, the trade show, and I'm joined by Nick Ray on the very end of the table. Hi, Nick.
How's it going? Thanks for having me back.
I'm great. It's like the second time I've had you in like a month.
Yeah, it's like almost two in a row.
Always do trade shows. And then we have David Ruddo, which have resuscitated from the darkness.
Yeah.
Hi,
from the
Dave.
dead.
Yes. Good to see you. Good to see you at IFA too, which is great.
Yeah, love IFA.
So we're at IFA. It's not really a phone show, but there's actually a lot of phone news this week. Not a lot coming from IFA. Some.
It's about a 50-50 split.
Yeah. So obviously I want to start with non-IFA things. Because, actually I'm kind of doing it chronologically a little bit. Oppo announced a Find N3 Flip phone, successor to the N2 Flip, and an improvement all around. And they didn't tell us much, right?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's a bit of a rehash of the one that launched earlier this year, because the one that launched earlier this year was just launched in February. So it's only been 6-ish months since the Find N2 Flip has come out.
Yeah. So what stands out to me really quickly is a much better camera system, which is kind of amazing because in that thickness, it's kind of amazing that they managed to do that. There's a Sony sensor of some kind. I don't know. I assume it's like one of the same sensors we're seeing on the Find N2, because the N2 had a slightly better camera system than the N2 Flip, the book style folding phone. I think it's a Sony sensor. It looks like it to me. OIS, because the N2 did not have OIS.
I doubt there's OIS in there just because of the size of...
I'm hearing that it will be in there somehow.
Okay.
So,
I mean, that module looks pretty
beefy.
large.
Yeah.
Well, it's pretty large, but it's not very deep.
I'm hearing that they took all of our feedback on the camera and fixed all the things. Yeah. With 3 lenses, I'm expecting a telephoto. I'm expecting that IMX, probably the 890, that's the follow-up to 766. That makes sense. The same size sensor, just improved, and then OIS, and then a tele of some kind. That's what I'm seeing.
And that's the thing. It is the first flip style smartphone with a telephoto lens.
Yeah, assuming that lens is a telephoto lens.
Yeah.
I mean, how much data?
Based off of the rumors, it was.
Yeah, how much detail did they give us though? Like,
it was one of those things where it's in passing. Hey, we launched a phone, and
I know they didn't give us anything.
Yeah,
like literally the PR folder they shared with me is like 2 JPEGs of like the phones looking pretty.
I think it's one of those things where the phone's not really retail ready yet. And
why announce it now?
Well, it's right around a trade show. There's a lot of news going around. They wanted to be part of the conversation.
Yeah.
Even though they're not here at the trade show. It was launched, 2 days before IFA kicked off.
Yeah.
I don't know. I do think Oppo is probably one of the most solid players in the foldable smartphone space. Like 100%. Everybody likes the Find N2 Fold, and their flip style that launched earlier this year was a great phone. Cameras were a little lacking, but as far as the overall phone experience, it's a good experience. And the performance is good. It's the MediaTek 90.
So we do have some specs. So that's why in my mind I kind of remember, like I said Sony because I read this GSM Arena article I'll put in the show notes. So it's 48 megapixel ultra wide, which is interesting. So they actually have a better, not only is there's a telephoto, but they've gone up on the ultra wide. I don't think there's any folding phone with an ultra wide that big at all. Not even flip folding.
Usually they're about a 12 megapixel, and usually for the main sensors, we've seen a lot of devices with a 12 megapixel main sensor.
Okay, so the 32 megapixel, the third camera is a portrait. So traditionally, the portrait lenses on Oppo phones have been non-OIS 50 millimeter, or 35 millimeter, like some sort of kind of like portrait optimized 2x sensor.
So no telephoto then.
So it is possibly usable.
It's a 2x telephoto.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
2x portrait.
Is that a telephoto even anymore?
Right? That's what I'm saying. Look, and this one, it does have OIS. It says that right here. 50 megapixel unit at 1 aperture OIS. But the display, the design, everything looks pretty much the same.
It's the same as the previous generation, which isn't a bad thing. Like it has
No,
a larger cover display on the outside.
look at
It's
this.
it's not as big as the cover displays that we've gotten recently from Motorola or Samsung.
It does look
But-
very tiny
For the cover display?
for the cover display.
Well,
Yeah.
compared to what everybody was doing last year, this was like triple the size of what everyone was doing last year.
Yeah, it's
But
3.2. So
it's still smaller
Z Flip 5
than-
is 3.4. So
Yeah.
not that far off.
But
Okay.
from none of us have used it, but from the images, they're showing that the functionality of the cover display has
It's
been
got apps
greatly
now, apparently,
improved
yeah.
over
Do you
what
see
they
it
had
here in
previously.
the image there? There's a bunch of Chinese apps.
Yeah. So previously they had
I love
about
Chinese apps. They're
they
my
had-
favorite.
they had like 6 or 7 little widgets you could have on the home screen, like a weather widget, a contact widget, and a couple other things. And now they're showing like 20 different things that you can do with it, and I imagine even more than that.
But you know, when it came out, the N2 Flip, I thought to myself, the aspect ratio on this screen is perfect
It's
for
better.
running apps.
Yeah.
Yet they didn't run apps. They only had widgets. And I'm like, what? Total lost opportunity. I think they heard our feedback on that because they
They heard our feedback, but at the time, nobody was doing apps. And then Motorola came out and said, you can run any app you want
Yeah, I
on the
know.
cover display. And everyone else said, yeah, maybe we should do that too. And I think Motorola kind of pushed the conversation forward where no one else was thinking about that before. Because as we know, Samsung's version of it is still a little bit janky. Not
Yeah, it's mostly because you have to like flip so many switches to get to it.
But Samsung, I think that's
It's like
because,
they have safety toggles.
right?
You know, like behind covers with red buttons, do not press. Like,
But that's happening because they were probably not planning on it until a month and a half earlier. Motorola said, "Hey, we can do full apps," and then Samsung was probably like, crap, we need to do that too." And it was like retrofitted through the back
I think
end.
you're
Like,
100% right.
yeah, they were not planning on doing it,
No.
and then Motorola did it, and they're like, "We have to do this to compete."
But this is exciting to me because I really like the N2 Flip. Despite honestly, I do like the Z Flip 5's widget experience. I think it's the best I've seen on a flip phone yet. I like the Moto's app experience on the front screen where you can literally unlock the phone from the front screen, start working on the front screen. You don't actually have to open that phone. You can use it all day on the front screen and even turn it off on the front screen. It's like the whole package. Whereas Z Flip doesn't do that. You have to open it from time to time to unlock and stuff.
The only downside to all of this right now, it's only been announced for China.
It's only China.
China
And-
only for roughly $9.99 ish.
Yeah. And you said Dimensity 9200. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
the
right there.
9200. So while the Find N2 Flip you can buy in Europe, this one you cannot. Maybe they're going to have a European launch in a couple weeks. They might be a little bit behind the curve on that. But for the Find N2 Flip, that was the global launch. They only had one launch event, and they
Did all of it.
did all of it. So it's questionable if this is actually going to come to other markets.
A couple of noticeable things here to me is that the battery is the same speed of charging, which is the fastest on a flip phone so far, 44 watts. So none of that changed, 4,300 milliamp hour. I recently ran benchmarks on all the flip phones that I had just to see what battery life was like because, I write for Hot Hardware. We have a database of benchmarks and we realized we didn't have a lot of data on the Chinese phones. So I was like, I'm going to run them. And overwhelmingly, the N2 Flip beat the Razer and the Flip 5.
It's the the
overwhelmingly.
MediaTek chipset.
And the larger battery,
Yeah.
too.
But the MediaTek chipset is so much more power efficient than the Qualcomm.
So I expect this to even be better because 9200 is even more efficient chipset. And did you notice, this is the last thing I want to bring up before we go to the next topic, alert slider a la OnePlus. Right there.
Ooh. I love a slider.
I love me a slider.
I love me a slider,
Although
except
I like a toggle better, I think.
I never use it. My phone's always in do not disturb.
That's true.
Right?
out-
Like
check
I
out the
turn it on and it
chunkiness.
stays on forever.
Yeah,
Check out the chunkiness on this camera bump, though.
it is. They should talk to a doctor.
Like you must see a doctor to have that removed.
No, I don't want them to remove it. I'm wondering, did you notice there's like a knurling on the ring around the camera?
Yeah.
I'm hoping you can do some sort of adjustments
Yeah,
with it.
Oh, that would be lovely and
my God.
absolutely
Wouldn't that
never
be
going to
amazing?
happen.
That would be, but it's not going to be.
Oh, come on.
Well, but like we saw the camera,
You put the
camera
knurling on
module.
there.
We see the camera module on the Oppo Find X6 Pro, and it has like the grooves around
it
it.
does have the groove
and
on it.
you're
It
like,
doesn't
oh,
have
this
that.
looks like it's a manual adjustable lens and everything. You're like, no, it's not. It looks really good, but no, it doesn't do anything functional.
All right. So anyway, look, I'm excited about this phone because I really like the N2 Flip. And even though it doesn't have the biggest cover display, I'm a camera nerd and I'd rather have those cameras than anything else. The flip phones right now have crap cameras, all of them, comparatively to flagships. And, you know, I was talking to someone at Oppo recently, unrelated to this phone, and they were telling me that their goal with their folding phones going forward is going to be to match the experience of a bar phone. They want no compromise. They just want you to be able to fold it open.
The issue I see there, though, you don't have the Z depth, so you cannot do that.
But that's why it's a challenge. That's why hopefully this
But
thing
like-
is the first to prove
like-
us wrong.
But you still don't have the Z depth. It's still not going to have the same size.
No, it doesn't have an IMX 989.
You're not going to have a 1-inch sensor
No,
in that phone.
but honestly, this sensor, if it's the 890, which I think it is, that's a fucking good sensor, man. That's OnePlus 11. That's, you know, Oppo Find N3 or N2, or the
Yeah.
book one. Like, that's fine.
Well, it's fine, but it's not the best.
No.
It's fine, but it's still like upper, but not the high. It's not what you're getting out of the high-end Xiaomi.
The fact that they got
Oppo,
OIS on
high-end.
this, and probably that sensor, is a huge upgrade from last year. And still Hasselblad. Although, did you notice they didn't mention anything about Silicon X?
Yeah, because they didn't want to spend the money to put another chip inside.
I don't think there's a Silicon X. So probably the ISP from the Dimensity is doing
From
all
the
the
Dimensity's doing
heavy
all of it.
lifting, right?
Well, the Silicon X was mainly for low light, anyways.
Yeah,
So.
but it did amazing results in low light video. Like, if you ever get your hands on a Silicon X equipped chip phone, the video on those phones at night, nothing can touch it. Not even an iPhone. It's unbelievably good. Like, the first time I used it, I was like, am I in a different parallel universe here? What the hell is going on? Remember MWC with the Find X5 Pro 2022?
Yeah.
And I'm shooting out the window of a taxi cab at night, and 0 drop frames, perfect smooth motion, no noise,
Interesting.
everything good contrast, no like super bright lights on the neons and the shop lights going through. I'm just, wow. But it's the only place where I thought it was really significant. So I guess we're losing that.
Yeah.
Anyhow,
Always a compromise.
speaking of cameras, we have an Xperia 5 Mark V.
A 5.5.
It was funny because I was talking to TK, I think, on the show like a couple of
Wasn't
weeks
it
ago.
a V though? Because the V name has been used in the past with Xperia, right? They
This
had.
is, yeah, okay, if you want. But I think, like, you know, if it's gone 1, 2, 3, Mark 1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
so
5,
we've it's the 5th iteration.
I
yeah.
see.
Yeah, it's the
But
5
yeah,
Mark V.
it's a 5V, which is a 5.5. This is the phone. It's a 5.5. Really, like
so
the
you know,
naming conventions here, Sony.
TK and I were talking the other day about this on the show, I think, in fact, about how, where is the Xperia 5 this year? Like, usually they announce them close to each other, the 1 and the 5. We've had the 1 for a while. I have one.
Yep.
And it's a great phone. It's the same as usual. It's like everything in the kitchen sink, overpriced, but all that Sony goodness. And they finally have some computational photography on the 1 Mark V, which is like, oh, you're catching up with the world. Amazing. You don't have to do everything as an alpha camera anymore. But the 5.5 is weird because it does not have a telephoto. They dropped the telephoto.
They dropped. I was gonna say the.
Well, isn't it supposed to be the more compact model?
Yeah, it was basically just a compact version
It's the
before.
compact-
Right,
literally.
so I guess that would imply to me that there would be a later model coming that would probably have a telephoto.
the
a
5
la
Pro.
iPhone.
We're gonna get
The
the 5
5
Pro.
Right, maybe.
The 5.5 Pro.
So the press here, like the blurb, the you know, the propaganda says that basically they didn't need a telephoto
Because
the
they're
main
gonna
sensor is so high end now.
You can do a 2x
so you can do a lossless 2x like on the iPhone.
but a lossless 2x is
not
not a
the same.
lossless 3x or
Variable
periscope.
telescope. Periscope variable.
Periscope,
That's
yeah.
the one with the optical variable I was telling you about there.
So like a
the 1
true
Mark
zoom.
5, not the 5 Mark 5. The bigger one.
Yeah. So true zoom, and we don't have that. I would say this is kind of a slap in the face for anyone
This is disappointing.
who wants a compact version of the big one.
Well, who's Sony really selling this to? Because
Nobody.
Yeah,
Let's
it
be
sounds
clear.
like Japanese market.
No.
They
It's Europe right now only.
it's Europe, but like
€9.99.
Well, I'm sure it's going to be released in Japan.
Oh, of
yes,
course.
Right.
Japan and the U.S.
Japan only buys iPhones.
But let's be clear.
Apparently.
Pixels.
No,
They buy
and
Pixels. Oh,
and
yeah, they love Pixels, too.
Yeah.
No, this phone is selling to absolutely nobody, just like the ones aren't.
1.5.
Their sales numbers are minuscule, but because they only have 2 phones and they don't sell them at discounted rates, they actually still make a profit off of their phone business. And they kind of use it as a test bed for camera technology that other companies buy from them to put in their phones. And so, right, like it's one of those things where they don't need to sell phones. As long as they sell 500,000 units, they're going to be fine because they don't market them. They don't spend any money. They don't have budget for anything. And so they're not spending money. But still, give us something that we would aspire to want
This
to
is a
own.
little disappointing, but the reality is still the rest of it is really great. Like it's got all the things we've always wanted from all the Xperia phones that they always had: headphone jack, wireless charging, big battery, 5,000 milliamp hour, and a small compact 6.1 inch display phone, OLED, high refresh rate, like super crazy. Everything is awesome. Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, lots of RAM and storage, micro SD. But you know what's this year? The question is, without that third lens, to me the question becomes: do you buy this or Zenfone 10? Because the Zenfone 10 is the other compact phone that has everything: wireless charging, headphone jack, good OLED, good camera, big battery.
And the Zenfone 10 is $300 cheaper.
Exactly.
So this is way overpriced for what it is. If
But
it
the
had,
Sonys, you never look at the price.
you don't look at the price, but people look at prices. Let's be clear. Like, I would totally buy the Zenfone over this device. 100%.
It
I
seems
think
like
that's-
probably Sony is specifically knows they have a target market. They know reasonably who's going to buy this, and most of these people are probably not very informed consumers.
No.
Probably people who love Sony as a brand, fanboys, which Sony fanboys do still exist. I've
They
heard.
do.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of them.
Yeah.
But look, the reality is, other than the dropping of the telephoto, which I think is very disappointing because that was a differentiator with the Asus in the past, right? For this form factor, which is the only 2 small Android phones that are any good.
Pixel 7, not the Pro.
Pixel 7 doesn't have a telephoto though.
But that it's in the same category.
You're right.
And the Pixel 7, $600.
Yeah, but Tensor.
Yeah, but Tensor. But like, if you are willing
I
to
say as I'm holding a Pixel Fold.
with a Tensor,
Most people aren't going to notice.
Same.
Like,
no, I agree.
there
You're
are
right. You make a
compromises.
good point. Or let's be more
Or
realistic.
even a Pixel 6,
Pixel
7a.
7a even.
Yeah.
And because the 7a is a brutally good phone.
Mhm.
Like in its price category. Like I honestly think that right now, if I had no access to any phones, my entire phone stash burnt, I was no longer a journalist and couldn't get anything,
You'd
I
just
would go buy out a
7A.
7a. Absolutely. Like it does everything. It has wireless charging. It does everything
Well,
right.
just buy the 7 because it's discounted to the same price as the 7a.
True. Then I can get a slightly
Right.
bigger main sensor. Yeah.
Right. No, it's one of those things. But like, at least Sony is still worried about design and stuff. Like their phones haven't iterated that much as far as from one generation to another. They're trying a new design. They keep iterating on this kind of pseudo-industrial look, and I personally
I like the
it a
narrowness.
lot.
Yeah.
And also the
21 by
green
9.
version of this phone,
Is
I
hot.
totally want.
Yeah, here.
I totally want.
Check it out.
Love a
folks.
green phone.
Yeah. Like the blue is nice too, but the green, I totally
Forest
want that green.
green or whatever that.
Where's
gray.
the green?
It's like a mint
That's
green.
It's a mint, right?
Yeah, it's like a
I don't know if I'd call that green.
it's like a
Maybe I'm
grayish green.
colorblind.
No, it's kind of grayish to me.
Yeah, it looks gray. That looks like a silver phone.
Yeah, maybe it's just a white
I like the
balance
blue.
issue.
The blue is nice.
The blue is good. But look, the reality is this phone exists, and some people really love the 21:9 aspect ratio. And every time I use
Oh, they're
an
still doing that.
Oh yeah.
Huh.
Also, they still have front-facing speakers and bezels top and bottom.
Yeah, front-facing
no hole
stereo
punches.
speakers.
Yes,
Wow.
stereo. No hole punches. No bullshit. You know, nice stuff.
Fascinating.
HTC's got to sue them. They're like, you're using boom sound. We stopped using that years ago.
But look, I love that Sony exists in the mobile space, subsidized primarily by everything else, and that they haven't thrown in the towel like HTC or LG. Or
well, I was
whatever.
going to say, I wish LG would simply do what Sony is doing.
100%.
Not care about capturing huge chunks of market share, but say, hey, we have 2 phones that are good.
2 phones a year.
And we're not spending the marketing budget to push them, but this as a brand, these are our aspirational devices.
Halo.
If we make a phone, these
it's
are the
Audi
things that we want to make.
R8 in the Volkswagen group.
Yeah.
Of phones.
They're not going to sell.
No.
But if you are going to make a phone, make a good one.
Yeah.
And it's like they're flashy in the way that, like, especially the 1 series for Sony, they threw everything in and the kitchen sink at it. Like, it's got everything that you want, except for the price point because it's stupid, crazy expensive. But it's because they have everything. Make that phone, sell it at a profit, and you'll be fine. But give us something instead of retreating from the market completely.
But does LG have any brand cachet to work with? I mean, Sony does.
Sony does, but like LG could, like, they made some good.
They make some really good appliances that people love.
Yeah, I don't think people buy them as like I love my LG things. I think it's more like
totally fair.
You go to Wirecutter and like LG makes the best washing machine. Go buy the washing machine.
Totally fair. Sony has that. Sony's always been an aspirational brand.
Yeah.
Like, there's a fan base behind the brand itself. Like, going back to Sony TVs way back in the day, or the original Walkman, or things like that. LG's never.
LG's missing that.
Yeah, LG really is like, we undercut Samsung by.
I think the problem with LG,
they're the undercut brand a little bit. They're still good, but they're like, we just wanted to be a little bit cheaper than Samsung.
The problem with LG, I think, is that they should, if they were still making phones today and they were now going to a 2-phone flagship model a year, I think that would fly because they would still be in the mind's eye of the public somewhat, right? But the fact that they stopped for a while, it's done. Like, they can never do it again.
I think the closest they ever got to having brand recognition was the V series.
Yeah,
you did have some people that really enjoyed that phone. Yeah, and I thought the original one, it was brutally ugly in its way, but it was different. It looked like its own thing.
Like, HTC could have done that instead of like going the other route of licensing its name and having other people build phones for them that are
getting rid of buttons.
No, but like getting rid of buttons, that was still HTC, but now they're still doing Desire phones.
Yeah, I know.
That are like India only for $150. I'm like, why are you even doing that? Like, give us an HTC One with all the bells and whistles and like no marketing, whatever. Kind of the same thing as Sony, right? Yeah. Like, just give us an aspirational device and call it a day.
I think niche products for a very small subset like my audience is a thing. And I think that, I'm not saying it's profitable, but if you're making other things, like HTC's making VR stuff, like Sony's making TVs and fucking everything else, and like, LG's making every appliance under the sun, I think when you consider all of that, I think that they should consider making these niche phones, because people don't all want an iPhone or a Samsung phone, and they don't want a Pixel even. They want something different.
Yeah, but I think phones
that's why nothing exists.
I think what it speaks to is the fact that, when you look at HTC and LG, things became so commoditized, it became very difficult to differentiate your product in a meaningful way.
Because they didn't try.
Well, and I don't...
No, HTC tried.
They did.
And LG tried too. Like,
the Wing.
LG tried 1,000 different
The
things.
original Optimus G, or there are
so many Gs.
The G and Friends. Remember the modules?
They did all...
LG actually tried some stuff that you look back and you're like, that was insane.
That was crazy.
Why did you even do that?
My favorite of the G series, I think, because at the time it was such a pivot, such a game changer, was a G6. When they went 18:9 or whatever, the 2 square apps side by side. Mm-hmm. Like, they're the ones who initiated the form factor that we all love today. This wider than 16:9 form factor.
Well, I mean, if you want to go way back, Optimus Vu.
Yes, of course. Yeah, the Passport, whatever. Basically the predecessor to this.
Right.
Yes.
Right. But look, I think LG, I would love to see LG do like a rollable or a foldable every year. That's like completely crazy. And like a really nice flagship, like the Sony Xperia.
Well, I mean, they showed off their rollable concept.
And
like,
they didn't ship it.
Right.
It wasn't even a concept. They made them.
Right before they said, okay, now we're shutting down our phone division. They're like, this is the coolest thing you've ever seen in your life.
You can't have it.
We're done.
You can't have it.
Did they even manufacture the panel for that? Okay.
They did everything. I think they made a round of 10,000 or something. They give them to their employees.
I remember, I don't recall exactly, but I feel like I heard that LG's flexible display business was not in a good place.
Could be.
But
I'm still waiting for them to have their flexible TV, their rollable TV to come down from like $20,000.
Yeah.
Like, make a $10,000 one. I'll buy it.
I'm waiting for these rolling phones to appear on eBay.
I'm sure you can find. Someone's got to have a connection at LG that can say,
They can.
Get me this phone.
I don't think it's LG.
No, it's not.
Anyway, my point is that I would love to see. I think there's a need. There's a market for what Sony's doing. It's tiny, but every time I use an Xperia phone, I'm delighted. Everything is really good, and the cameras, if you know how to take photos like you do with your Fuji cameras, it's actually a great experience. Are you gonna mash a button and get the best photos every time? No, that's why you have a Pixel or an iPhone. Or
The idea of shooting manual on a phone makes me want to kill somebody. It's awful in every way.
I agree.
I do not ever want to adjust knobs and dials on my phone.
But maybe that's the thing. Maybe if Sony went crazy and added like rotating wheels on the edge of the phone for various things, what if?
Yeah. No.
Well, there goes your waterproof phone, almost certainly.
They could make it happen. There's Sony.
For like $2,500 maybe.
Whatever.
I mean, it's already $1,700.
Yeah.
So we're not that far.
We'll add another $500.
This is €1,000, but the One Mark V is $1,700 US.
I believe it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's Sony, folks. So just weird decision, this telephoto, though, right, Nick?
Yeah.
Like, that's a bit strange. Anyway. Okay, so now let's now talk about IFA. Okay, we have a lot to unload here. I'm looking at the time. We've been on this for 25 minutes. I'm giving us 15 generous minutes to unload on Honor. Because OMG.
There's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack. So here's the news as a factual thing. The Honor Magic V2, the thinnest folding phone in the world, which is a book-style folding phone, which is really amazing, which has come out in China a few weeks ago, is going to be available globally. It's not out. It's going to be available globally. We don't know the price. I hear my little finger tells me Q1. This is far away. This is a Sony move, which is really weird. And apparently it's to perfect the software experience insofar as the folding software experience, like to kind of try to come close to what Samsung delivers.
To be clear, they've had multiple folding phones already.
Yes.
Right.
And their software has been very basic for a folding device.
Yeah, kind of like Pixel.
So it works, but it not even kind of
Not
like
even
Pixel.
that good?
No, like you can do apps side by side, but that's like the extent of the experience.
Right, there's
like,
nothing.
There's no third app. There's no.
Yeah.
There's not a Samsung experience.
That's what I'm saying.
And like even Oppo has a slightly better experience. So it's not bad. It's just very basic.
Right.
I think this is the iPhone person in me that I've become, but I just don't give a shit about doing anything on a phone that is not displaying an app. And so 2 apps side by side, I don't know what more you really want.
Well, that's how I feel. But look, I'm just hearing rumors that the reason it's Q1, which is crazy because at that point it's going to start feeling old, right? Is that they're really wanting to abolish the software experience.
Well, so and it's not necessarily more than app side by side. It's the experience of like if I'm using an app on the outside screen, when I open the phone, what is the user experience?
Right now, different experiences happen on different folding phones. So that, or if I'm Google Maps in here right now and I close it, does it continue on the front?
Okay.
Some phones do that.
That sounds like a Google problem.
No,
it sounds like a Google problem.
It does. Well, so
it is a Google problem.
It is a Google problem, but like Motorola has shown with their flip phone that they've completely thought it through.
Yeah, and it's really good.
Like, so if you're using an app on the inside and you flip the phone closed, it pops up for a second saying, do you want to continue the app? Or so you're like, yes, and then it pops up there where the other ones haven't. So like,
when Google figures this out in a year, then everyone.
What do you mean a year?
Like
whenever
20
5 years,
sure,
20 years.
Whatever.
I
mean, to me, this is ridiculous that this is still happening on Android. That like manufacturers are having to like connect the dots. Where Google won't.
But it shouldn't be rich because you remember when you worked as a journalist. That's exactly what was happening all the time with Android.
I don't remember anything.
He's spaced out. He's like, I have no recollection.
You blocked it out. Well, you just recalled a whole bunch of LG phones. You haven't blocked it all out.
What was I talking about?
Right. Remember, he said he's now an iPhone user.
Yeah, I know. That's kind of true. I've seen that. Look at Apple Watch.
I do. Apple Watch, iPhone.
iPad.
So I want to know when
AirPods.
I don't like my iPad very much, but I do have
Mac.
one. I do have a Mac. Yeah, I do have a Mac.
Look at that.
How quick was the transition from Android to let's ditch it all, I'm going Apple?
I had already started.
You had already started.
That's right. You bought an iPhone just before you left. Right?
I bought the Apple Watch again because I had tried one a couple years before and I loved it that much. And when I got another Apple Watch again with the iPhone, I was like, I like wearables that are okay.
At work.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, talk forever about iPhone crap. Yeah, Honor really. So
but before we continue, I just want to kind of give the chapters of the Oppo series. So there's a V2, which is global now, which is strangely not launching right away, which is I don't understand this. Secondly, there is the V Purse, which we can totally have a rant about, and then there is the presentation related to that was also rant worthy. And so I let's continue.
So as far as the phone goes, the hardware looks.
The V2
amazing.
Is incredible.
It does. It looks crazy.
The thinnest smartphone
9.9 millimeter shut,
foldable phone.
4.7 open, barely big enough for the USB-C port.
And so what they're saying is when it's unfolded, it's the world's thinnest smartphone.
It is.
Yeah, and which is, as you were saying, barely big enough for the USB-C port.
2 millimeter thin battery.
Yeah, the battery thing.
The battery
that blew me
insane.
away.
If you stack 2 credit cards, the ones that don't have the embossed numbers on them, that's the thickness of the battery.
Wow.
And there's 2 of them, and they add up. This is crazy. This 5, is the 000. Highest we've seen on any folding phone. 5,000 milliamp hours.
I wonder what those batteries cost. They've got to be very spendy.
Silicon carbon, right? They said.
Yeah, so it's silicon carbon, which means they're more power dense.
Yeah, it's
than
basically
regular
the latest
batteries.
in tech.
Yeah, so silicon carbon is technically considered a semi-solid state battery.
Correct.
I believe. So it's like we're not all the way. We've talked about solid state batteries and how I feel like. That's going to be the next generation
100%.
Of changing smartphones and
cars
portable
and
technologies.
Everything for sure.
And it's one of those things where it's like, but there's this middle ground right now with these chemistries that are slightly different, but can add 15 to 20% capacity. Then they're not going all the way solid state. And I love that because you can get a phone that is smaller, has a smaller footprint, but a larger battery capacity, which is amazing.
I know this isn't the Battery University podcast, but are there any trade-offs with these? It's a website. It's a great website. Is there any trade-offs with these semi-solid states, really?
So right now, so cost is the main trade-off because it's a newer technology. Right. And right now, they're saying in the labs, as far as like charge cycles go, they should get the same. But it's still a new technology, so it's still unproven. But technically, the solid-state batteries and the semi-solid-state batteries should get more charge cycles than what we've had with traditional lithium-ion. Mm-hmm. So the technology is better. It's just new, so it's more expensive. And so we're going to get to the point where we're going to see this roll out to smartwatches and earbuds. Yeah. And so, imagine your smartwatch lasts 2 to 3 days now. What if it got 6 days?
Yeah. With
the same footprint, but just more power dense within that same footprint, which is going to be amazing.
Yeah, so I wear an Apple Watch that I go to a day and a half.
A day and a half, right?
Here's some thoughts, spec-wise. So OLEDs at 120 hertz all around. They can do something like 4,000 hertz pulse width modulated dimming,
which is great. I love that.
It's amazing,
especially when you're filming a phone.
Yeah,
okay. You're not seeing that band go down for my. But it's for eye strain.
Yeah, I don't know. I would have to read some of the science around that. It seems questionable.
I thought it was questionable until I met people like Nick Sutrich, who are absolutely sensitive to it. And they immediately see the difference. And
interesting.
It takes away the migraines they get in low light. Because they have to dim the display. So they have to display that 240 hertz that the iPhone's using or 480 hertz is not, not enough.
It bugs people's eyes.
It's some people are super sensitive. It's like, cilantro. It seems to be genetic, basically. So it's a real thing. The industry's kind of looked the other way because OLED is so much nicer.
Yeah.
But it's a reality, and for a lot of people, it's a deal breaker.
And they've been, to be fair, they've been doing this for about 2 years now.
They've been doing it for a long time now. They're the first to really do it. Okay, so here's the display. 8 Gen 2, lots of RAM and storage, Android 13. The cameras are interesting too because they're not making compromises. Again, you're getting a main sensor with OIS. You're getting a telephoto that's a 2.5 optical, but with OIS. So they're not. Again,
they don't have the Z depth to go to.
They're not messing about. And 66 watt charging, no wireless, of course, thickness.
But 66 watts is
fast.
Good for a foldable. I mean,
that's good for anything. Yeah. I think that once you're above 50 for a phone.
Well, when Xiaomi starts throwing in 200 watt charging into their devices,
sure. But at that point, to me, that's like what is the actual your benefit as a user is marginal at that point.
No, it charges the phone 0 to 100 in 32 minutes.
Absolutely.
Versus an hour.
Absolutely, but the use advantage for the average person there is whatever.
It's minor,
But to be fair, I took a shower the other day. I plugged in the phone and it was completely dead. And when I got out of the shower, it was 100% full. Versus my Pixel was on the charger at the same time. It was 18% charge.
Sure,
I'm
that's
come on,
a
Google.
Tesla Plaid to a base level Golf,
right? It's Google, you can do better than this.
So what's interesting is I had with the Realme GT3, the first 240 watt phone.
240, yeah.
It's 9 minutes, from empty, 100%. It's crazy. You take a shower, your shower is probably longer by the time you dry. Anyway, so this phone is cool. We've all been covering it for weeks now because it came out in China and it impressed us. I can't wait to get a review unit. I can't wait to try it out, especially once they do the software optimizations. I'm just surprised they haven't given us pricing and a date. And it seems like it's a ticking time bomb because somebody else could come along and Xiaomi has already made a phone that's close to this thing.
That was announced a week ago.
Yeah, the Mi Mix Fold 3.
Mix Fold 3. And that's slightly
close.
thicker.
It's just 0.5 millimeter or something thicker. And
I think both of them have the same issue with the software. It's very basic for the foldable experience. But it looks like Xiaomi's right now the Xiaomi is China only.
Yeah,
it's not global. But I think they're content with the user experience that it offers, and if it's China only and no one's complaining.
The person I was talking to that was telling me about why they think they're delaying the thing is that in China, it's much faster to work with the app manufacturers, software developers to optimize the apps for folding phones.
Sure.
Because they can just kind of impose their thing and just they do it, right? It's not whereas here it's that's such a niche product right now that there's not a lot of traction to develop.
When you think Instagram still isn't optimized,
doesn't exist on iPad
tablets,
yet. I know.
For even for iPads, there's 100 million of them, and Instagram says "screw you" to the iPad.
So the next question is: this is a great phone. We're all looking forward to it, and it's nice to see Honor really making a product that is bleeding edge. In the past, all their products up to now have been kind of trying to compete with the rest of the world, making a flagship that competes with the S series from Samsung and the iPhone 14 or whatever, the flagship iPhone of the time, making a product that competes with Google, etc. Their camera phones are really strong, but they're not as strong as Huawei used to be back in the day or Google is today. You know what I'm saying? They're close. But this is the first time we see them come out of the out the gate with a product. You're holy crap, this is the best we've seen in terms of hardware by a manufacturer in a while. So that tells me that they're definitely trying to push the envelope a little bit. At the same time, we got to talk about the V Purse because...
You mean my latest fashion accessory?
Correct. Because I feel like there is this whole Huawei Honor thing we need to talk about. Because until now, there were always kind of a plausible deniability. They always kind of had a story, and then this V Purse comes out, and it is literally a Huawei Mate XS2 with a Honor brand on it, the LED flash being slightly shaped differently in the same physical location, and a little, what is it called?
Shoulder strap.
Thank you, strap. So what do we make of that thing? It's a concept.
Yeah, so the fact that they're calling it a concept, they made a point of saying, well, it's not the magic V Purse, it's just the V Purse. Because their other devices have magic in the name because that's their high-end brand. We're not putting magic in the name because it's only a concept. They're trying to say this is a concept of what something could be done. So to the point of this looks very much similar to...
Identical.
But so to that point, it looks identical to the Huawei foldable from 2 years ago.
No, 1 year ago, the XS2.
Yeah, but the XS2 looked exactly like the XS.
Which looked exactly like the X.
Yeah, so let's
three generations.
Let's be clear. The chipset on the inside is new. The design is 4 years old.
Correct. Yeah.
That was 2019.
Thinner, they have made them thinner.
It's thinner.
Yeah.
But to the point of it's only a concept, and technically they could probably still get away with oh, but we had this internally 3 years ago before
Right,
we had
before
the
we split out.
separation. It's
Yes.
just the concept, and we had these concept prototypes that we were working on, and we finally fully developed it because it was developed in conjunction with what Huawei was doing at the time before we split. They could totally make that argument, but everyone at that press conference said, "Oh, I have that phone at home already."
Right.
And I was sitting next.
There was a gasp. We were just like,
I was
what?
sitting next to Michael Josh, and Michael Josh says, "Can I get that accessory for my Mate X2?" And he's like, "I can turn mine into a purse. This is great."
I mean, like, we were briefed, to be frank, a couple of weeks ahead on this, and I believe that I was with Ben Sin on the call. I was like, there was a lot of different briefings, but most of the people on my briefing were European and Asian media. Because of the time zone difference of the West Coast, it was on a few West Coasters like me and Benson were on it. I think everybody else in the East Coast got briefed way earlier in the day, in the middle of our night, and we both gasped. Like I side chat him, like, "Dude, is that what you think? Is that a Huawei Mate XS2 or XS or X?" He's like, "Yeah."
All right, so somebody who's not a journalist and has no relationships preserved. This is just a company doing a really terrible job communicating
it's
product.
Terrible, right?
Well, it has nothing to do with product aside and relationship to Huawei aside. I don't think anybody in the marketplace cares about that. Yeah, they don't know. They should never have briefed anybody on it. It should have been something that just appeared in the press conference and this is a concept. They don't say anything about it and you move on.
Exactly. But what did they do? They spent 20 minutes.
They did. They spent most of the presentation
talking about it. They had people. They are doing a collaboration with Red Frame Time magazine, which is like, I don't know if that's exactly what it's called, but with a collaboration with Time magazine, with their fashion section, and they talked 5 minutes of the intersection of technology and fashion colliding to bring us new things in our world, and this is the future. And I'm sitting there
Phygital.
Phygital.
That's it. Phygital.
Oh,
and
God.
So my number one takeaway from this, so you have these models come out on stage wearing this foldable phone as a purse with the display on the outside. And I'm just thinking, okay, so you're going to a restaurant and you go to the bar and you sit down at the table and you smack it on the side of the table and your $2,000 purse
is broken.
Just broke because you were wearing it as a purse.
Absolutely. And I think it speaks to why they said concept. This is 100% a vanity project. It has nothing to do with...
They want to say we're hip and cool.
Right.
And we are in with the fashion industry because everyone wants to be, let's be clear, everyone wants to be in with the fashion industry. Motorola wants to be in with the fashion industry with their foldables. We license the Pantone color of the year. Yeah. Like they're all trying to do this high fashion thing with these devices because they want them not to be techie devices. They want them to be an aspirational, I want to look cool. It's the alternative to everyone's like, what's the cool phone? It's the iPhone. Oh, but now it's foldables, right?
So to me,
it's a fashion statement.
Right. Well, it's more, if you want to just get into the market opportunity, margins in the luxury good business are amazing.
Oh, 100%.
You can make something that costs, 5 single-digit percentages of what you are selling it for, maybe fractions of a single percentage potentially, depending on the brand.
You can make a Dior bag for $22 and sell it for $3,000.
Exactly. And so with smartphones, especially on the foldable side, I think what manufacturers are dealing with, and this is why you saw Samsung do that, like the Tom York collaboration or whatever.
Yep.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
So they would love to be able to say, all right, we have this very expensive product, the margins kind of suck, especially by their standards at this point.
Mm-hmm.
They spent all those years developing margins on bar phones and they're very good right now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Flip phones come along, fold phones come along. Oh, there went our margins. How do we basically leapfrog this instead of having to wait another 10 years? Yeah. Fashion brands are one way they could try to do that. I think it's a terrible idea. I don't think any consumer is fooled by this.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody is going... Nobody, you may have some people who buy like designer phone cases, like Kate Spade, but even then, you're talking about like a slice of the market that is not at that ultra. No one's paying $500 for a phone case. No. That's not a real thing.
There's people that pay $100 for a phone case.
Exactly. And I think when you try to use like, brands like, what were they using? Burberry. Burberry, you want a $5,000 jacket. Okay. Like nobody is going to look at a phone the same way they're going to look at that coat. It's not an investment. A phone's something you replace every 2 years, probably.
Yeah.
It's just not in the same product category.
Well, I think it's interesting, though, like, talking about cases for the phones versus the manufacturers and the margins that they have on them. There's so many accessory makers that make more money in the phone industry than the phone manufacturers themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, cases literally cost
even
pennies to make.
Cases, like even Anchor.
Yeah.
I bet you.
But like even Anchor's has like their products are hefty, their phone chargers and stuff, and you have to ship them from China. But like you have a case that literally cost 5 cents to make on a mass production machine, and you're selling it for $25.
Right.
Like those margins are insane.
Right.
Like, and you know this specifically because like you go to a carrier store.
Right.
And you go to the carrier store and the sales rep doesn't get paid to sell you the phone. He gets paid for every accessory he sells. He gets a 50% bonus for every case he sold you. That's how much margin there is that even the retailers are paying these bonuses for. And so partner with Dior, partner with like these high end to make cool cases for a phone, but like don't make a phone the fashion accessory. So make the add-on the fashion accessory.
We need to look back to LG, who was the first to do this with the Prada.
Oh
yeah, the LG Prada. Yeah,
LG, the innovative brand. Okay, so my takeaway on this V person, for me, it was like, I just feel like Honor, I understand, does, whatever the ties are, if there are any left, they have to worry about the U.S. sanctions, right? That's the reality, right? So they can't come out and say, whatever the reality might be. But I feel like they should at least say something like, hey, we share manufacturing, we share parts bins or something, because that's fine. Like they have a third party that manufactures their phones for them, right?
You could even say that we have subcontracted Huawei's software team to build our software.
That might be harder for the U.S. government to accept,
but you can have a subcontractor to work on stuff. Like, that would totally be fine. Tell us the truth about what's going on, because Huawei says they are no longer using Android. We are using our own thing.
But you put side by side with Honor, actually. In the same menu items, the same everything. No.
But then Huawei launches a new feature, like their new PC connected feature of how you turn your phone into a PC.
Yeah.
Huawei announced this feature a year after the separation. Magically, it's on Honor phones. Like, wait a second. How do you have... And you're calling it your own thing, but it's the exact same thing. The development cycle of the software is the same. Just tell us you are licensing Huawei software to put on your phone.
If I'm Honor in this position, saying nothing is my best strategy.
Yeah.
But
engaging in the conversation is bad for me.
But here's the thing. But then we are having this conversation. And so we are bringing it up. If they said this is what we're doing, we would say it one time and we would move on and never talk about it again.
I don't know. I think putting it on paper, that creates awareness.
Well, the plausible deniability thing.
Right.
The issue is, it's still in the conversation with us. Like, they're not talking about it, but we are.
Yeah, I think as a brand, I now have some experience on the other side, and my thing is, if it's something that's going to potentially be entangle you in any way, just don't talk about it. And I don't think that the conversation around this will be very enduring or create much consumer awareness.
No,
it's very much inside baseball.
It's inside baseball, but it's interesting to me, like on a personal level, I can say is that as I kind of was willing to believe that there was some more separation than, as they were saying, the story they were weaving was accurate. But in the last year, and especially with the V purse, I am no longer feeling that way. I am now feeling like we're getting lied to. And as a journalist, it kind of sucks.
I have a very sad story to tell you about Buick then.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the way they showed this phone on stage, because that's another thing that you, as somebody who's been working in marketing for a while now, it's the message. The way the message came out was just horrible. Right?
I was transported in a time machine to the year 2011 when booth babes still roamed the halls of trade shows.
Do you remember that Samsung? Was it the S3 or the S4? The terrible New York?
Yes, the New York music. I wasn't even there for it, but I have trauma.
I wasn't there, and I have
even
trauma from covering it.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely terrible. This was much worse than that from a standpoint of being offensive. Granted, much shorter, at least. But you had a man on stage telling women this is the purse phone you're going to love. Me, a man, telling you what women should buy.
And then not having men models, just women models.
Exactly.
Who were typical booth babe type models.
100%.
There was not a woman that was maybe a little bit, rounder and a little more realistic looking. And the other thing is, none of the presentation, they could have had somebody else come on stage, maybe a woman come on stage, or maybe another man even come on stage,
right.
rather than just George, the CEO, just, spewing his thing
who
with no tone,
well,
right?
You could have had an executive from a fashion brand who's a male, not a tech executive telling women about fat. Like, there's so many layers of, you could have parsed this 1,000 different ways, and an executive from a technology company who builds smartphones talking about fashion at all, and then talking about high women's fashion is a whole nother thing. And it could have been handled. To be fair, they did have that 3-minute video clip about fashion experts talking about it, which, but that was not enough. It was not enough.
Yeah, it was not enough. All right, let's move on to a Huawei product that was announced this past week and a half. Huawei Mate 60 Pro debuts with 3 punch holes in the front display.
I can't look at the front of this phone, man.
Does it give you tryptophobia?
Yeah, tryptophobia is a real thing.
For those of you watching on Patreon, I'm putting it up in front of you right now.
It's kind of bizarre.
It is very strange.
The back of it looks like the remote I have for my Vornado fan.
The back of it
gives me this kind of vibe.
This curve has HTC vibes to me.
It does actually a little
right?
bit.
Like here, guys.
I kind of like the faux marbling look. I'm not against it. It just has its very distinct vibe.
I just want to point out that Huawei still makes freaking awesome phones, because if you look at the spec sheet on this thing, it is absolutely ridiculous. Well, especially
it's a Mate phone. It's supposed to be absolutely ridiculous.
But the camera system has a completely variable aperture. It doesn't have just stepped aperture. It has a variable aperture between I was telling you that the other day, f over 1.4 to f over 4.0, and it has.
Though, to be fair, we've had phones with variable aperture, even though they've done step apertures. I have never not had it at its lowest aperture.
Well, it depends what you're trying to shoot. If you want to shoot a person in front and there's other people in the back, you want everyone in focus, you're going to have to open the aperture.
No,
close it.
Take one step back and it's a smartphone. They're all going to be in focus anyways.
I like options. This is good.
They're all going to be in focus anyways. You're never going to blur out the background.
All I'm saying is that this phone has some interesting things in the cameras as usual, and it seems like Huawei still knows what they're doing. The triple hole punch is weird, but it's got a time of flight, proper, Face ID thing. But here's the thing that
Tell me it doesn't look like that, though.
Oh, it totally
Show
does.
me. Show the people. Oh, yeah.
It's a remote control for a floor fan.
Floor fan. Okay.
And they've reused this design a couple times, and some Honor phones have this design as well.
True. What I'm trying to figure out is the processor, because, the rumor is that this is running a Kirin 9000S. Which is a variation on the Kirin 9000 they did on the P30 or P40 Pro back in the day.
Yeah.
And this is from a company that supposedly doesn't have the capability to make more chips.
Well,
and
I'm sure they got some tape in a
license.
closet somewhere.
Yeah, but it's an ARM license with 12 cores. It's a different core count.
Huh.
So it's actually a complete redesign. It's not that they can use the 9000 that they might have in the closet. So there's a lot of questions here, and it's 4G only, although I'm sure they could flip on 5G on that thing, because they had 5G on the Kirin 9000.
So we were talking about this the other day. There's these rumors going around that Huawei is buying a chipset manufacturer in China on down low, like through shell companies, to make their own chipsets rather than getting the Qualcomm chipsets. And I forget the original source of this. I think it was Bloomberg or something like that.
Yeah, I heard it too.
And so still all unconfirmed because shell companies and whatever. So, but there's rumors that Huawei is making their own chipsets through a phantom factory that they shouldn't be owning and making Kirin chipsets again.
Because until now, since the 1.6, they run out of the 9000 stock that they really put on their best phones, even some phones for a while. Some markets had the Snapdragon 4G GIMP chip, and the Kirin 9000 in China, and then they ran out of 9000s, and then since then all their phones have had Snapdragon, the previous generation Snapdragon. So like right now it would be 8 Gen 1 or 8 Plus Gen 1 with 5G disabled. That's what they've been using on their phones. And it's fine because it's a Snapdragon. We all know what to expect. There's no 5G or whatever. Like, you really need that necessarily? Probably not, depending where you are live in the world. But it's interesting that, anyway. I like the fact that they're still pushing the envelope. Yeah. That's all I'm saying.
Too bad we can't buy them.
No. And too bad that every time I get one to play with somehow, and I put it side by side with the Honor, the OS, the icons, the menu, the order of the menu items, the names of the menu items are identical, and you're like, what the F? It's so bizarre. And then one has GMS and one doesn't, Weird. Fairphone 5.
Fairphone 5.
That's another IFA thing.
I stopped by their booth yesterday to watch the full teardown of the phone.
How was it? How long?
It took about 5-ish minutes to go from a fully assembled phone to a mostly disassembled phone.
And did they put it back together, and how long did it take?
I didn't watch them put it back together.
Oh, okay.
I would imagine the same amount of time.
Yeah.
It's mainly time consumed with taking tiny screws out.
Right.
Yeah.
But for those who don't know, Fairphone is a small brand who's worried about sustainability, and if anything on your phone breaks, you can buy parts directly from them.
Here you go, guys.
So you can, the back has a removable plastic panel. Yeah. Remember those
The battery
clips?
is just removable.
The battery's just removable. You remove the battery. You can remove the speaker module at the bottom. Once you take that off, you can remove the USB-C port at the bottom as well. And then you have screws to take out the display. You can take the display off, and then you can remove the camera module, and each one of the cameras can then be separated from the camera module as well. So any of those pieces break, you can get one directly from them. They'll ship it to you. I think they're also working with third-party repair shops as well to have the pieces in stock that you can buy from them. It's a great idea. This is version number 5.
Here's what I'm excited about on this phone. This is the first Fairphone where I'm like, I could use this. Because in the past, they've always been pricier because you pay for that, right? But they've also been kind of very mid-range. And now the specs are finally solid. This is a 6.4-inch, not huge, but OLED, but it's 1224 by 2700 pixels. So it's like that weird tweener that we're starting to see between Quad HD and 1080p. There's a lot of phones with that now, like 1220-ish pixels. And then it's got 90 hertz refresh. It's an AMOLED display, up to 880 nits. So it's actually very competitive. The camera system is also pretty competitive with a 48 megapixel main sensor with OIS. I love that the entire mid-frame is literally a mid-frame. Yeah. It's literally aluminum right through it. Because the battery's not integral to the structure because it's not glued in, it's a little beefier around the battery. Like you can see it. You can see it really well here. That is not plastic. That is part of the aluminum frame. So it's a thicker, like a 5 millimeter thick, hollow structure around the battery to keep that strength so you don't bend the phone in half. There's a lot of little details in here that are very well done. Sorry, it's a 50 megapixel sensor, the main one.
I'm sure the dads on Howard forums are blowing up the shortwave right now.
Well, I believe that didn't Zach at JRig Everything take this apart already?
I think he might have, yeah.
And you know what I really like? I like this triangular camera pod. I think it's sexy.
Yeah, it looks... compared to previous Fairphones, it's the best looking Fairphone.
It's best looking.
Sure.
It's the first one with a hole punch instead of a teardrop notch, which is also kind of like a little more modern.
But it's still a solid mid-range phone.
It's a mid-range. But what I'm saying, I could use it now. It has enough minimum... acceptable specs for me.
The nice thing is they promised 10 years of software updates.
That's insane.
Which is insane. But to be fair...
5 years of warranty.
5-year warranty. But, to be fair, their previous one finally got the, end of life for software updates. That one had, 8 years. They're it finally rolled out its last update.
The Fairphone 1?
I think it's Fairphone 1. But the last update was Android 10. We're on Android 13, so they're not necessarily good about giving you the latest version of Android. They're still slow to get those updates out. So you're going to get 10 years of updates. So what we're going to be coming out with, this is launching with Android 13. So it'll probably finish with Android 20, not 23, right? So they'll they'll take a little bit longer to get those
Right.
up. They're not.
But
huge
I would
volumes.
never keep that phone that long. I'm just excited about the idea that you can repair it and it's somewhat more, sustainable.
Yeah.
Question for you, since you saw it being assembled or disassembled, does it come with a screwdriver in the box?
Comes with a screwdriver in the box.
Oh, wow.
That is so cool.
Yeah, it's a.
You know
it's
who
a
else is doing that?
blue
by
and
the
black
way?
screwdriver comes in the box.
Nokia is making a phone that's completely user serviceable.
Interesting.
Remember that at MWC? I can't remember which one it was. It was a big announcement. It was cool. Not quite, I think, as modular as this, though, in the sense of fully portable.
It definitely seems to be a European market trend.
Well, the European governments are a little aggro about that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
For good reason. So the last couple of items are PSAs for the audience. There is now officially I don't think it's official yet, but it's clear that the Google event will be happening on October 4th. So mark your calendars. And it's also official that the Apple event is happening on September 12th. So mark your calendar. Those two things happened this week. And now we have dates. And Techtober is officially Techtobering, even though it's September.
September-tobering? Septobering?
Septober.
We need to stop. There's no word for it.
Oh, man, we haven't come up with a word yet.
But do we need to come up with a word because it's every month?
I kind of like Techtober being 3 months long. I mean, that's kind of where we're at.
Well, there's usually nothing in December, so we're good.
So
at least we have a...
Do we have November? No.
Well, MediaTek is happening, but it's just a chipset announcement.
Qualcomm is going to announce their chips in October this time.
They're announcing a couple weeks early.
Because apparently the Chinese want to launch their flagships before the Chinese New Year.
No, apparently the chipset is done early, and so they want to get it out there and get... Like, Qualcomm's had a rough year. Like, all chips, everyone's had a rough year.
What do you mean a rough year?
Smartphone sales, this is the lowest smartphone sales in a decade. They've sold fewer chips in it.
They think announcing a chip's going to make that any different?
But they can announce a chip and start shipping chips, and it helps this year's numbers for the stock market and get
I get it.
Get 10 million chips out the door, it helps.
I was talking to Rich Woods the other day, who's been on the podcast most recently for the Z Fold Z Flip. We did the Korea live podcast there with him. And he was telling me that, Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 is a given, but that's not what the excitement is going to be. The excitement is going to be the Orion-based PC chipset that's going to be competitive with the M chips.
That they teased last year.
Yeah.
Sure they will.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what they say.
That's what they... If
Like,
they can actually
I have no
do
doubts
it...
that the benchmarks are going to match, but once you actually use a Windows PC with that, it's not going to even come close.
Yeah, you know what I do on my Mac all day? I run benchmarks. It's my favorite thing.
You know what might actually work? A good Chromebook running on that.
You know what might actually work? You're just buying a freaking MacBook with an M chip and call it a day. Might actually work.
There's people like me who still just
Premiere, right? Is that what
Windows.
It is? Just switch to DaVinci.
It's just my whole life I've been on Windows.
Be nice, okay?
Exactly.
You were on Android forever.
I made a choice, and I'm choosing Windows. And
choose life.
No, but
some people eat frozen pizza. I mean, it's not a good choice.
My wife.
Sorry.
So I know, right? But it's one of those things. You make a choice. It might be good. It might be bad. You just got to live with it, and I'm living with it.
Sorry.
I know. But honestly, what's preventing you? Do you actually have I understand if you have software that prevents you from switching. I
don't have software. It's just I like the user experience of Windows better than user experience of Mac.
That is fair. I mean, I don't understand.
No, but that's the beauty of a multi-platform world we live in. You can make a choice of what works better for you. So.
Yeah, for sure. But look, let's see what happens. I honestly would love to see Microsoft and Qualcomm or Microsoft and MediaTek come out with a viable product that can come close to competing with Apple's in terms of performance and
here's
battery
the thing.
life. I'd love that because I'd love to have choices as well.
The thing is, they need Microsoft on stage saying, we've actually really worked for Windows on ARM to make it
And they haven't.
actually
They're not
viable.
committed to it.
No, but like they need them on stage to say, actually, we're announcing this in conjunction with them. Like
Right.
they need that to happen in order for
But
it
they
to be a
actually
viable
also need to
solution.
deliver because
No,
Microsoft's
exactly.
been saying that they're making Windows ARM, and then it sucks. We
No,
all
but
know that
that's what
sucks.
I'm saying. Like they need Microsoft on stage to say it, and they actually need to deliver on it for it to be viable in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
To me, the M competitive Windows PC is like the idea of a structurally stable Chipotle burrito. It's not physically possible. Like the physics just aren't there.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard for me now that Apple has a 3-year lead on this to just see how they can catch up.
But we talk about that as people within the tech industry. We forget that Windows still has 85% market share with laptop market.
85% market share of people who are miserable because their battery life sucks.
But it's still 85% market share. So like
how much of that is, that's organization.
But it's still
Yeah.
85% market share. Like
Yeah.
people are taking their work laptop home, they're using it for personal use. It's still, they are the dominant player within the space, and Apple still has not been able to disrupt them in any viable way. From a user experience standpoint and performance standpoint, totally, Apple kills it every single day. But people still walk in and they see 14 options versus 2 options. And whenever you have those 14 options and the prices are a quarter of what Apple is doing, they're still like, I want a laptop. I can buy one for $400 versus $1,400, and they'll buy the one for $400.
My thing it's not, but Windows isn't competing with Mac. They're competing with an iPad at that point. And so then the numbers are totally
But then
different.
Windows versus iPad, the iPad is a horrible laptop experience.
100%.
But guess what? That's what you see everywhere.
No, but to be fair, yes, Apple wins the tablet conversation hands down, but people are still buying laptops.
I guess my point is that laptops as a consumer product actually seem to be
It's
declining.
diminishing. Completely.
And tablets are the form factor that's replaced them, and Apple utterly owns the market. And so it's not that the iPad itself is doing great on sales either. That's also seems to be sliding.
They've had one of their worst years for a while.
Absolutely. And in fact, it seems consumers in general are souring.
Well,
on
I think consumers in general are souring towards the large form factor, and you can do more with your mobile device. Do I need a laptop?
Yep, exactly.
Like, I think that's more the question. Do I actually need this device in my life? For us, we do, like for the work we do, but you see people within the tech industry that travel with an iPad and they have a
Harry
Bluetooth
McCracken's
keyboard,
been using an iPad
and they're editing video
for years.
They're editing video on an iPad coming to trade shows, and I look at them and I'm like,
wow,
do I want to do, like, there's still compromises that go along with that, right?
Oh, huge ones.
But you can do the work.
Yeah.
And so it becomes, am I willing to make those trade-offs and compromises to get slightly better battery life, or just that different user experience where it's not a full laptop that's a one-trick pony type thing? But who knows?
I'm also hoping MediaTek gets into this somehow, because then we have choices. On that, and Windows has always been about choice.
Well, MediaTek's in it, like
the Chrome stuff.
No, MediaTek has the largest. They power the Lenovo 13-inch tablet with the 9200.
Well,
that thing is massive.
But I'm talking about getting into an
alternative.
M competitive chipset, right? Like literally.
Well, I mean, that's an Android version of whatever.
I'm talking about like running Windows 6 ARM 64 or whatever. Well, we'll see how it goes. All I know is that I'm excited about this Orion chipset simply because I want to see what it looks like and where they can go with it. And it's not going to change the fact that I'm going to be on M something MacBook for the next 5 years at this point, pretty much. Unless something radical happens, right?
Yeah. Nothing radical is going to happen.
On that note, do you guys want to tell where where they can find your stuff? Nick, do you want to start?
Yeah, if you'll find me personally at Nick M. Gray on Instagram, X, even though I'm not really there, Twitter. That thing is X. Or find my work on Fandroid.com, YouTube as well, and Instagram, TikTok, all that fun stuff.
Dave, where can folks find you?
I'm on Threads and Instagram as David Does Fuji. If you find me on X, I don't do anything there anymore.
Are you Anywhere else that we should look like any kind of...
LinkedIn.com.
Ooh. And folks, you know where to find me on the internet. I'm at Tank Girl. That's TNKGRL, just like the comic book character Tank Girl. Just drop the vowels and you get my Twitter handle, X handle, whatever, my Facebook, my Instagram, my Blue Sky, and my Threads. And of course, if you want to listen to the podcast, mobiletechpodcast.com is URL. We're on all the major platforms, Google, Apple, everywhere, Spotify, Pocket Casts. So please subscribe and tell your friends about the show. And if you want to watch videos, there's a YouTube channel, youtube.com/mobiletechpodcast with some videos. There's also, of course, my Instagram for photos of phones and cars and travel and stuff. So subscribe to all the things. And more importantly, try to help me out with Patreon. If you want to contribute financially to the show to help me do it every week, patreon.com/tankgirl. That's patreon.com/TNKGRL. There is a video version of the podcast for those who want to watch us on video, brandishing phones and kind of, it's a bit more personal. So check it out. We also include bloopers and edits sometimes, so it's kind of fun. But check out patreon.com/TNKGRL. See if you can support me there. There's a bunch of other tiers and options you can check out there as well. And if you want to help in another way, there is a PayPal link in the show notes. You can click through and give me like a $5 coffee or something. Finally, I want to thank our sponsor, Mint Mobile. You know I review a lot of phones, so I'm constantly juggling multiple devices. While that's fun, it also means I'm spending a lot of money for wireless service on multiple SIMs. Thankfully, there's Mint Mobile, and that's who I'm teaming up with for today's podcast. If you want to save money on your wireless service, switch to Mint Mobile. You've probably seen the Mint Mobile ads featuring Ryan Reynolds, but let me quickly tell you how fantastic their service is, especially for tech-savvy early adopters like us. Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for as low as $15 a month, and you don't have to sacrifice any coverage, speed, or data. They're built on the nation's largest 5G network. They keep costs low because they sell direct to you online. They cut out the retail stores and salespeople. Why should you pay more than you have to for access to the same network? In my experience testing phones, Mint Mobile delivers the same data speeds and call quality as the big three for a fraction of the cost. Switching to Mint is super easy. Thanks to their eSIMs, you can sign up and activate immediately right on your phone from the comfort of your home. No more standing around waiting in line at a big wireless store. You can keep your current devices and phone number and easily switch services. And if your phone isn't eSIM compatible, Mint will ship you a new SIM card free of charge. The whole process only takes 15 minutes, and if you get stuck, Mint has a great customer service team to get you through it. All Mint Mobile plans include unlimited nationwide talk and text, plus lightning-fast 5G and free mobile hotspot. Mint will show you how much data you use each month and recommend plans that save you money. Mint also offers a modern family plan that lets you set up a super affordable family plan with as little as 2 lines. Use my link, mintmobile.com/mobiletech, to get premium wireless starting at $15 a month. Stop paying more than you need on your wireless bill and start saving big with Mint Mobile. And I want to thank you, Nick and Dave, for being my guests this week here in Berlin at IFA. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We'll have you both on the show at some point in the future. And folks, we'll have another show next week. So please stay tuned for that. Until then, cheers, everybody.
This has been the Mobile Tech Podcast with Tank Girl, proudly presented by worldpodcasts.com. You can visit us online at mobiletechpodcast.com.